Buonasera, bine ați venit. Herzlich willkommen im Goethe-Institut. I wish a warm welcome to everybody to our Rendezvous Goethe tonight. Rendezvous Goethe in company of Martin Haake and Capucine Gros. We will talk about our project which starts tonight, now, and which is called Grenzenlos, frontiere, borderless. And it's a project with very different aspects, and two of the main actors, so to say, of this project are tonight with me to talk about their part of this project. This project was born, I would say, 8 months ago, and it's not by fortune that we are talking again about frontiers or about borders, because during the pandemic we learned how fast different countries, European countries, others one, closed or opened their frontiers due to the different situation of the pandemic. And sometimes it seemed also to be a little bit paradoxically how different countries closed and opened their frontiers. We wanted so to investigate, to think about borders in different ways, maybe also about the good parts of border. It isn't meant only to be critical, and we had the idea together with my colleague from the library of the Goethe-Institut, where Capucine is sitting now, and not only she's sitting there, but she is already putting on the wall her artworks. We will show from next Saturday on, next Saturday, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. You can come to the Goethe-Institut and discover the different parts of this project. So on the one hand, we will have an exhibition, and our curator, Adrian Buger, has chosen several artists working or dealing, reflecting about maps, about borders in their artwork. And Capucine's work is I wouldn't say mainly, but for a good part dealing with this question. So thank you very much, Capucine, that you are in this show. But first of all, I have to ask you, before a little later on I go to Martin and talk about his contribution to this exhibition, and we will also show you some pictures. So I wanted to ask to Capucine, you moved quite a lot, so borders are used to you. Did you experience also bad things with borders in your personal life, or was it easy for you to be mobile? I've read you were in Switzerland, you were in Romania, you were in France, so and China and the States. Was it, as for you as an artist, was it ever difficult, or could you be easily mobile?
I would say I'm fortunate that I'm definitely in the fortunate section of the world population, because I have a French passport, which I don't know exactly which is the ranking, but you have a whole ranking system on which passport gives you access to however many countries. And overall, I would say I've had an easier time than most people possibly. But I've definitely experienced, especially trying to live 11 years in the US, this construction of borders, who is allowed in or out, how expensive and complicated it is to live there. For me, it was definitely a factor for wanting to come back to Europe after so much time spent there. And I was just talking this morning with a friend comparing the immigration process in the US versus the one in Romania. And so I always, for the last 10 years at least, struggled with this absurdity of why is it that we all want, so many of us want to go to the same places, and we have these so-called centers of the world when the world is so much larger and there are incredible things in so many places, and it has so much to do with culture, with the maps in our heads, with what we know and what we don't know about certain places, because there are incredible things everywhere, and what can culture do to tilt off the balance a little bit. So I'm always very interested in the deep why are we perceiving the world this way, and then how do we navigate it as a result, and how that impacts us and how that impacts others. Because if we do all want to go to the same places, then we create this system that makes it even harder for people to go where they do want to go.
Thanks for this first statement. Yes, it is. It's interesting, and maybe Martin Haake, I ask you the same question if you want. Yeah, what means mobility for you? Did you have ever problems with borders and to being mobile? Because you are also a very international working artist. We will go back to this a little bit later.
Yes, but you know, I probably have similar experiences to Capucine. You know, never had any problems regarding, you know, borders and going to where I wanted to go. Though we lived in quite a long time in London, in England, and the idea was now actually to go back to the UK and live there, but this is because of the Brexit something that is not possible anymore. But apart from the fact that I once forgot my my license when I went to Greece and I had to go back, there was no bad experience. And though, of course, traveling and, you know, moving from country to country is such a regular and such a normal thing, has become such a normal thing that, of course, for those who are not able to do this, so we are in a very lucky position.
You're completely right, and I don't want to give any lessons, being a little bit older than you are, but I remember good the time from before 89, for instance, where it was impossible to go to many different places, but we're also inside Europe. When you went to live in another country, you had to have really complicated procedures to get the necessary papers, and this is something we really developed in inside Europe. When you come as a European from the European Union to Romania, it just takes 2 hours to make the necessary steps to get your CNP, so and to stay here. So this incredible advantages and progresses, we can't underline it enough, I think, and it's precious, and we hope so after the pandemic, but not only the pandemic made these borders. We remember also all the questions related to refugees, which produced the same reactions of closings of borders. But let's come to your works, because it's interesting. Capucine, you are exhibiting 3 works here in the framework of our exhibition. How did you come to work with maps, and how do you do?
I think at the beginning I was just fascinated by maps from traveling, of course, but from hiking also, just feeling like once you draw a map, or once you know your way through a map versus a GPS, for example, your knowledge of the ground is, and your experience of the physical space is completely different. You have an understanding that you can never take away. Like once you experience it, you know, okay, this is one day walk, or this is mountainous, like it's something that you cannot forget. So there's a very visceral emotion. And then from traveling, every time I went to a new place, I felt like I was filling a piece of the puzzle. And so actually now that we're installing the work here that has one frame per country in the world, it's installed in a way that is very puzzle-like, and it's the best way it's ever been installed, I believe, because this is really the world is an infinite puzzle that we're working on as we go through it all our life. And I think there's also for sure a political dimension. I feel like I understood the world much better through maps, and I still am. Having lived in China, of course, there's a lot of very interesting questions of power. Basically, the first time I saw a map of the world with China in the middle, I realized, oh, okay, it's totally subjective. And then more research came around. You see the Australian map where the north is in the south, and the south, you know, everything is inverted compared to what we're used to. And then you realize how everybody is warped, everybody is biased. And so all my practice is really trying to dismantle these different constructions that have been put in our heads from the moment we saw our first map.
Yeah, thanks
And,
already
yeah.
for this explanation. And this is true. Borders can be real, can be exist, maps also, but giving them colors, giving them certain places, giving their spaces mean a certain construction of the world. And this is very, very important, especially in our times, because what you said is also related to all the post-colonial debate about how we conceive the world. Where is the center? Is there a center, or isn't the periphery not also part of the center? So these are very important questions, and I want to underline that the both of you are approaching this subject of maps in a very, very original way. That's why we are very happy also to have you here. And just let me add that we have also many other activities about maps. For instance, in the museums of maps here in Bucharest, we will have a small show about fake maps. So this, because you talked about China, so this tendency from certain authoritarian governments to make fake maps, where if you have a look to Eastern Germany, for instance, from before 89, certain roads going to the frontier weren't right on these maps because they didn't want the people to find it, for instance. So this is one of these examples we have. But maybe we have a look to some of your works and you give us some comments on it. Maybe we could just start our slideshow.
Yes, this is part of this project, trying to show every country in the world. So it was a performance I made for 200 days. And every day I wore a different shirt, which I screen printed myself, and it had the shape of each country. So on top on the left, you can see Nauru, the second one is San Marino, and so on and so forth. So I took a picture every day. I wore it the whole day. So if people saw me multiple times, you know, over the course of the performance, they could see the countries change. And then we can go to the next slide. And this is where you see all the shirts installed together, and you can compare the shapes and get an idea of, okay, what shapes do I recognize right away? Which countries am I familiar with as a shape on its own, and which ones am I clueless about? For sure, we are used to seeing the African continent as a country, like we in our heads. For many people, it's just one shape, even though it has it's full of other countries. And also, where are the straight lines? Because when there's a straight line, usually it's colonial history, because somebody literally drew a line on the map. So they're very interesting things to study like this visually. And then there's another iteration, actually how the project started. Before I had time and to make all the shirts, I started with sketchbooks, and I make these every year. One sketchbook handmade per year. It has 1 page per country. They're ordered from least populated to most populated. And I remake it every year because the population changes. Sometimes countries change. Sometimes the name of the country changes. And I'm really interested in this geography that changes, because we think, oh, a country is a country, but actually the concept of nation state is quite recent in the history of the world, and it's still changing. And also everybody disagrees on how many countries there are in the world. So I'm interested in all these questions. And just one more image on this project. This is an idea of how it's going to look here at the Goethe-Institut. You have the 200 prints on the wall. And then in this installation, we also had the shirts and a video of the photos, but it's just another way of showing the whole thing. Should I continue to the next project?
Yes, please. But I just
Okay.
want to stress the fact that that every country's shape is, so to say, at the same level.
Yes, very important. Yeah, they're scaled to fill the whole frame, which for some countries it seems very normal, but countries that have territories, which are usually forgotten from the maps, and France is the #1 guilty country for this, they end up very small, because I didn't want to have the big country and then you have the small islands or French Guiana or all these islands as additions. I really plotted it and scaled it down. So France looks tiny. Also, countries that have a little piece of Antarctica, they have a little triangle at the bottom. Or the United States, you know, they have Guam and all these other islands, so they look quite small. So I also like this, even though I tried to be very scientific and rigorous, I like the irony of the colonial countries becoming small as a result of their greed in a way. But yes, thanks for pointing it out.
Thanks. Yeah, it's important. Let's go on.
Yeah. So next project is called The Geography of Love. And it works always as diptychs. So on the left, you have a map with all the people I love or loved. And on the right, all the people I could love. So we're going to show just a close-up. So I wrote down the places of the people I love or have loved in the past. And then I stitched them. So the map is screen printed, and then every person is like a little cross that is hand stitched. And then the could love, the one on the right, this one is covered entirely, because the idea is theoretically we could love anybody in the world if we were born there, if maybe we had met somebody else, or if, you know, we had traveled somewhere. Like all this, I'm questioning how much is chance, how much is our choice also. And I'm interested in really the geography. My love is all on the same latitude. What does that say about me? And how would it look if I was born in South Africa, for example? And then, so we're showing these maps here at the Goethe. We're also going to have some takeaways for people to work on, and the big interactive map. So we're going to have the big billboards and people can draw. So over the exhibition, we'll be able to see a sort of collective love of whoever is coming to the exhibition.
Thanks. What I like much about this work also is the way you are, how do you say in English, sentimentalizing maps. So this is it is to fill it with emotion, with possible emotion. And I believe to remember that you have another work where you are dealing with things you are reading in newspapers and putting it on the map.
Yes. I didn't prepare the image for this, but it's I'm recording the deaths of people around the world. So it's a similar process of plotting, but the map is white, the paint is white, and you only see the thickness of the places where I read more deaths about. And again, it's this idea of trying to make every life count. One life should be equal to one life, but it's not at all how it is in the world. You know, the way we hear about this is completely biased depending on the media we read. So I have these huge journals with all the news. So you can see very well my bias. It's almost like a journal, like an autobiography, because you can see the newspapers that I read or the TV news that I watch. And then the map itself is also very distorted. There are places that are very thick, but it's not necessarily because there are more deaths. It's because I read more news from those places. So France is very thick. Also New York and LA, because obituaries are always from those locations, like in the New York Times and so on. So it's a very autobiographical map in a way, and it's white on white because it's a failure. It's a total absurdity. I cannot put every death on this map, but it's this absurd attempt of trying to make every life count the same.
Thanks a lot, Capucine. So we invite you to discover these beautiful artworks from next Saturday on. I was just turned to Martin Haake, who is an award-winning artist and illustrator. You are now in Berlin. We would love to have you here in Bucharest for the opening, but unfortunately, it isn't yet possible. It would have been possible in a month, and maybe you're willing to come to the finissage. We'll see. You passed several years as artist in Hamburg, London, and Germany, and you worked for many different medias, also the New York Times and the Guardian, Die Zeit in Germany, and you conceived since a certain time maps, special maps. And the same question for you as for Capucine. When and why did you start to deal with maps?
Well, actually, I started with illustration about 25 years ago or so, and at that time, the maps that could be seen in a magazine or so, they were very graphic. They were very technical. They had the aesthetic of, let's say, a Google map, and that was used very often. And I thought to myself, I wanted to do it more personal. I wanted to do maps that have a certain personal approach, and as well as and so I tried something new and something that was probably a little bit different than the technical maps, and I thought that maps are perfect for my specialty, and this is collage. The collage is what I love most, and I think the maps are perfect, are a perfect thing to work on them with a collage. So the great thing is, it is, maps are abstract. Is an abstract thing. You have a background, and then you put on some dots for the cities and some lines for the streets. But if you see that, it has no meaning. It has no sense in a way. And then by putting some collage elements, for example, lettering, for example, collage elements, people, landmarks, persons, little ships, trees, etc., into the map, suddenly it becomes some kind of useless thing that you can use, and suddenly the abstraction gets lost, because now people, they are used to read the line as a street, or the dot as for the city, or the shape for a lake, and this is that's why I started, and that's why I really loved it. Also because to make a part of the world quite personal. Of course, most of my jobs are an assignment, so I work for certain clients, and more or less there is a kind of briefing for me. But I try to make it a personal map that I like, and in the end, hopefully, others like it too.
Thanks a lot for the explanations. I think you published in 2016 a very successful book, a kind of city atlas. Mm-hmm. Was this all, which is translated in many other languages? Is this also an example of your way to treat maps? I couldn't have a look to the book. It's just a real question.
Well, actually, I have it here with me by coincidence. So it is called City Atlas. And actually, but this is a children's book to make it possible for children not to leave the room, not to leave the city, or to leave the house, but to walk through the world, through the big cities of the world, and have a look. The landmarks, the cultural specialties. What's so interesting about all these cities? that was the idea behind this book.
Thanks. Before we come to the work you are presenting here in Bucharest, maybe for you also we have a look together with you to some of your works and you give us some comments to understand. Could we have the slideshow, please? Okay, the first one, and it was chosen, it was very good chosen because it's in a certain way in relationship to Romania.
Yes, it is. Well, actually, this is a part of my newest book, The Great Rivers of the World, and this is the Danube, chose the Danube. So, I mean, I'm a classical cartographer in a way, you know. I'm depicting certain countries and put all the elements in it, make it, of course, personal, but it works as a map, map for a long, long time have worked. You can, you know, walk around, see where is Bucharest and where is Rome and these things. You know, so this was also part of this book. It's the Mekong, where you find all interesting things in that area of the world. Here I tried something else. I tried to do an historic map. It was for a magazine, and it depicts the world in 1517 with all the quarrels, with all the, you know, there was a lot of happening at that time, and also cultures clashes. And you have Martin Luther in it, and sorry, here's this is, I mean, they all are quite similar, but this was, for example, and this is also clients I'm working for are tourism boards. So this was for Los Angeles, and they, you know, they assigned me for a couple of maps of Los Angeles with a lot of streets and highlighting restaurants. This is something, this is Munich, and this was from the beginning of my, of the time when I was making maps, because the lettering and all this was very important for me. Now it gets a little bit more, you know, a little bit more tidy, you know. In that time, I really tried to make it as rough as possible. Yeah.
And before we come to the project, the new one we produced, you produced for Bucharest. How do you choose the motifs? Do you make a list of, and you say, oh, okay, it has to be equal? Is there gender equality? What is a little bit so your criteria, so to know, say?
It is. It's of course a lot of research. So a lot of you know, reading books, searching the internet for images, searching libraries for images, and of course the diversity of people. It's quite an issue at the moment. Also for me, because I was not. I mean, not that I was, but I was a little bit. I didn't care so much. But now it's really. It's also from the client side. It's very important to show all people, and which I think is a really liberating and a good thing. But I'm sure this has changed in the past few months, I would say.
Yeah, you're completely right, and this was also a little bit the core of my question, because what you're doing with this kind of maps is you are in a certain way reducing. So we reduce for instance, a country or a town on some very emblematic signs, partly stereotypes, and this on. And this is also, as for the artwork of Capucine, this is the question, and I'm very lucky that you talked about it now, how we express in future this changing world in matters of equality, of diversity, and so this is really challenging, I think.
Absolutely, absolutely. So it's there are many actually many things also, because you are doing a map and you're putting it online by Instagram or so, and you get a lot of feedback if something is, I don't know, if some cliche I really try to avoid that, but sometimes it's necessary for a map to use some stereotypes, or not, but the obvious, to make clear this is Rome, and then you put the Colosseum in it. But there is some kind of now feedback that really remembers you that there is a change, and I really appreciate that.
Great, and please, Capucine, don't hesitate also to add things if you want. So
actually, I was wondering if, Martin, you ever had to or felt the need to re-edit for an older map, or have you been asked, or is there any map that you've made where you now look back and think, oh, I really wish I had added this? Or do you ever do things over time? Since it's a lot client-based, I'm curious if this ever happens.
Good question. Actually, it's not that I really, have a look at older work probably, and I'm not, but it's not that I would say that there was a moment when I say, oh, I really would love to change this map because it's totally wrong and I got it totally wrong. It's only that from the aesthetics, sometimes I think it really needs some refreshment.
So coming to the new work you are presenting here, you did again a map. It's a map of Germany, but and it will be pasted behind me in our courtyard in some days, and one could, so to say, walk on it. And what is special, it's connected to an application. Could you tell us a little bit about it?
Well, the idea was, the brief was quite open. I mean, it was just to show Germany, and what is Germany now, but not only what is Germany for me now, but representing kind of the new Germany, if you want, though not to forget, the cultural background, as well as I also like this, some folkloristic elements, and some, I think the map is quite, understandable. There are not so many elements that need to be, apart from buildings or so, but I think I tried to make it a map that, that would work as a poster, and there are not so many, things that you do not understand. So this is quite an open map to understand quite well. Sorry, I don't hear you.
Sorry, I mute often the mic to have better quality. So excuse me. There was a question in the chat, but you answered already to it. It was all about the research and also exactitude of research and things like this. And we are very proud that you put in the middle of this card this map our dear Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. Thanks a lot. But I know we exchange also about it, how many, for instance, female artists we put on this map. So this was already a discussion, and you're completely right. We wouldn't have had maybe 10 years ago. Exactly. So this is really changing. Yes, and did you already work with this kind of application, or it's the first? We have a local studio here in Bucharest. They developed an application, and with this application and your mobile, you can have a look to this map, and this map will live, so to say, through this application outside of the Goethe-Institut, and it's a kind of fun for the whole family, I think. But for you, is it the first time?
Well, first of all, it's such a shame that I at this point can't see it. But actually, I don't know, a year ago or so ago, I did an inaugurated reality app for the Konzerthaus in Berlin, and you were able to fly over Berlin, so to speak, and there were points, for example, the zoo, and they made noises. The elephant made a noise, but the noise didn't come from an elephant, but from a musician who did the music and did the sound for this. So it was not the first time, but and I have no idea how it will look, this app. I haven't seen anything yet, so I'm very curious.
So maybe you come for the finissage.
Yes,
so
I will.
If things are improving as they do, actually, it is not. It stays a possibility. So this is, as we said in the beginning, 2 parts of this wonderful project with many different Romanian artists also coming, another artist, German artist coming from France. This includes also different other things. We will show films, we will have talks, and if I'm not wrong, Capucine, you will also give a workshop.
Yes, I very much hope so. I don't think we have a date yet, but as far as I know, it's in the plan still.
Yeah, just 2 words about it.
Yeah, the idea is to have a family workshop related to maps, and I plan to bring many different maps that I mentioned a little bit to look at the different perspectives, the different ups and downs, and some of the things without revealing too much we might do is blind maps. So when you're blindfolded and you draw the world, depending on the age of different people, of course, fill the love maps and explore our inner bias in a fun way.
Great. We are looking forward. We are very happy.
Me too.
I thank you too, the both of you, having had this discussion with me, and hope, yeah, Capucine, we will see certainly for the opening. Hope to see you, Martin, next here in Bucharest, maybe now or a little bit later. You have anyway a standing invitation to come here. Thanks a lot for this cooperation, and to all our public, please come and discover this very beautiful project. Thanks a lot. You will find on the Facebook side and side of the Goethe-Institut the entire program with the different activities from tomorrow on. Thank you. Have a nice evening, and see you soon.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.